We speak about this now with social worker, writer and justice monitor working with whistleblowers, John Clarke. A very good evening to you, John. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So the Treasury has taken the decision to do this, saying Bain engaged in corrupt and fraudulent practices, as we said, related to a SARS contract. Is this an unprecedented move? Has any other multinational company or local company faced this kind of sanction?
It does look unprecedented, and hopefully it starts a precedent that we will start seeing other companies come under scrutiny. I'd be interested to see how closely they've studied the Zonda report for other candidates for this sort of sanction. But I would like to go a bit further and put a context to this, because for the last 15 years as a social worker, I've been working with the Amadiba community on the Wild Coast. And I would like to make the point that I wish the government had banned the Australian multinational mining company, MRC, when I submitted a report in 2013, 9 years ago, alleging human rights violations by that mining company and their BE partners also, in undermining that Amadiba communities who were trying to resist the unilateral award of mining rights for the Kolobeni mineral sands on the Wild Coast. Now, I was just simply the social worker helping mediate that concern to the public. I reported it to the South African government and to the Australian government, and both of them actually ignored it.
Okay.
So, I'm not going to be all cynical about it. Let's hope that we now see more scrutiny being brought to bear on multinational companies for how they conduct themselves in this country.
Okay.
I mean, the same mining companies.
John, well, let's stick to this one and we'll get to other companies more in terms of what the South African government ought to look for. But I want to look particularly at Bain. It was hired to help restructure SARS, and Bain will get to what it's admitted to and what it's hoping to do now. Has acknowledged the damage done. But the restriction will only apply to any other contract for services awarded to Bain & Company in the public sector. Is the private sector likely to follow suit? We've heard that Britain has instituted its own sanction, as you heard Lord Peter Hain call on US President Joe Biden to do the same. But the private sector here in South Africa, is it likely to do the same?
Yeah, I think it would need to be a different kind of sanction than simply restricting suppliers and what have you. There needs to be a kind of an extent to which there's a commitment shown by such investors and foreign companies to the normative values that are enshrined in our Constitution, in the preamble especially, and that they are committing themselves to those values, because we talk about the rule of law. But the rule of law implies a sense of values that are actually underpin it. It's not just simply a kind of a lip service that's being paid with nominal compliance to things. We want to see a commitment because we're in such dire straits in this country that we need all the positive goodwill as possible. We don't want to end up marginalizing anybody that has a contribution to make. I don't think we're asking for people to be perfect. We're asking them to be sincere. And I think that the story of Bain shows a manipulated a strategy to try and present themselves as positive through the media, hoping that they could sort of control a narrative. And, strengths to Athol Williams for sticking to his guns and making darn sure that they didn't get to it. And obviously, remember the role of whistleblowers. They are able to see things from the inside out and see what's going wrong.
And tell me what whistleblowers have revealed, because as you said, they've tried to engage in some sort of reputation salvaging, even though in an open letter addressed to the South African community in the managing partner, Stephen York, said the company had engaged in this kind of thing that it finds regrettable in terms of the damage to the tax agency. But what kind of damage was done? What are whistleblowers saying?
Well, I mean, if you apply it to SARS, I mean, Athel's book talks about the fact that it wasn't just simply a capture; it was a repurposing of what is really the heart of our South African economy for the interests of foreign capital. It was and I think what we're now saying is that the state hasn't just been captured; it's been dismantled. And what we're now needing is a reassembly of a dismantled state. And, the community of whistleblowers that I work with are from different institutional contexts, across the board. And it's quite shocking when they start comparing notes, because they can see the same pattern of retaliation against them, the weaponized use of disciplinary procedures, for example, against them. Athel left the country, was able to get out of here. There are so many people still in this country who are facing merciless retaliation for simply saying, hang on, these state-owned entities are meant to serve the common good of society. And he's got a very long way to go. I think that it's good. I don't want to take anything away from what's happened to Bain. And I just know that President Ramaphosa has got a report to Parliament soon on this response of the government to the Zondo Commission. And he wants to say, look, this is what we've done. I'm challenging him, saying, Minister Gwede Mantashe, you need to say, what are you doing with mining companies? President Ramaphosa, there's a lot more.
In that vein, John, because we are running out of time. So Bain admitted that its tax agency fell short of standards and said it had refunded all the fees and interest that it had earned from its work for SARS. But the point is, are there universal standards that corporate entities, especially foreign, must adhere to while operating in South Africa? And are they?
They're not. And I think the main thing is restorative justice. It's one thing to, beat their breasts and say, how sad they were and they will make some financial compensation. What about those people that were kicked out and marginalized in the Treasury, in SARS, in the state-owned entities, who are still sitting without jobs? I want to see a determined commitment for them to say, we will re-employ you, we will compensate you, we will acknowledge you as being the heroes, and we are really very sorry.
All right,
and
John,
look us in the eye and say, I'm sorry. That's what we want to see.
Thank you so much. Apologies for cutting you short, but we have run out of time. Social worker, writer and justice monitor working with whistleblowers, John Clarke.